Thank you very much for opportunity to attend the 8th meeting of the Working Group of Sustainable Forest Management of Carpathian Convention. My name is Linda Hnatova and I represent a company named Climate Goals, founded in the United States with teams in Europe and Asia as well. As a brief introduction, we founded Climate Goals to develop, incubate, and distribute innovative technologies to address our collective global mandate to reduce global warming. As we all know, this is a multi-decade mandate that requires continued intervention by human beings to achieve the desired results. We can comprehend this long duration of time quite easily within the context of forestry management. Trees take several years to grow and oftentimes several years to die. I have prepared some slides today to help us share some realities and our vision. The best way to understand the actual situation regarding forestry management across the Carpathians is the brutal honest with ourselves. Perhaps the woman in attendance here today would be the first to agree with me that we are most brutal honest with ourselves the first time we look in the bathroom mirror in the morning. It's probably when we are most real selves and completely vulnerable. This daily dose of reality may be painful for many of us, but this leads us to healthy understanding of reality. On the surface, we know that our beloved Carpathian Mountains are the third longest mountain chain in Europe. In arc that extend 1,500 kilometers and crisscrosses several countries. More locally, here in Slovakia and Poland, we know these mountains as Tatra Mountains, majestic with their 2,600-meter peaks. As an individual who grew up in the shadows of these majestic Tatra peaks, I can appreciate how big presence they have been in my life, literally and figuratively. When we add some political boundaries and rivers to our map, we can begin to understand why we are assembled here today. We are all environmental stewards of these wonderful mountains, along with the forests, ecoregions that span our countries. In keeping in line with our approach of brutal honesty, in understanding the challenges and opportunities presented by Carpathian forests, I think all of us would agree that it's generally not a good thing when we as a human beings get red dots on our bodies, and really for whatever reason. For full disclosure, I had the measles in the 1988, but as those of us who grow up in communism can attest, having basic things like cameras before 1989 wasn't exactly a common way of life. Fortunately, those red dots on my body went away by themselves, just like the red measles dots on this gentleman's face went eventually naturally. That's not the case with forestry SS, however. Just like in previous slide, let's keep in mind that red dots on these slides are bad and represents the loss of tree cover. Let's first look at our baseline year of 2001 as we observe tree cover loss with at least a 75% canopy destiny in the year 2001. 4 years later, in 2005, we can see red dots begin to appear. A close observation in certain areas reveals the progression of tree cover loss with at least 75% canopy destiny. We see deforestation in southwest Poland, eastern Czech, southwest Ukraine, and central and northern Romania, among other locations. 2 years later, in 2007, we can observe that these clusters of deforestation begin to intensify, especially here in Ukraine, Romania, and Slovakia. A close inspection of the situation in Romania evidences a particularly bad clusters of deforestation in Romania Apusani Mountains. Albeit Transylvania is 4 hours away from the Apusani Mountains, perhaps we cannot conclude that Dracula never had a case of the measles. Friends, look how bad things progressed in 3 years leading up to the year 2010. We see an acceleration of deforestation taking place and we see new areas being afflicted. Here in Slovakia, we can see some terrible areas of impact in the forest around the Tatra Mountains and the Low Tatras. The problem also works in most other places, especially Ukraine, Romania, and Poland. Our sick patient debilitated further in 3 years to 2013. Notice how the hotspots flared up and got worse, while new clusters spread around these hotspots. Much in the same way the measles virus is highly contagious, we can view how natural ecological and man-made ecological contagion became more of a problem about a decade ago. In the 3 years to 2016, we of course see much of the time red dots becoming more prevalent and signifying tree cover loss in expanding. Let's think about this period of time in history. In 2015, all 193 countries that were members of the United Nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. We can appreciate that Sustainable Development Goal 13 applies to climate change, and the Sustainable Development Goal 15 applies to life on land topics that are certainly relevant when discussing forest and deforestation. It doesn't take too much to also realize that our forestry management practices also intersect with other sustainable development goals, including SDG 3, SDG 6, SDG 7, SDG 11, SDG 12, SDG 14, and SDG 17. Let's also think about another important international agreement that was drafted, negotiated, and ratified during this period of time, the Paris Agreement. This accord addresses climate change mitigation, adoption, and finance. Over the next 2 years, through the year 2018, the situation of course worsened. In particular, look how bad the situation became here in Slovakia. We can also begin to see more of an impact in Hungary during this period. Poland, Czech, Austria, Ukraine, Romania, and other countries also saw their forestry assets deteriorate considerably. Finally, we see how bad deforestation became in the period between 2018 and 2021. Our patient has gotten progressively sicker, which is a shame because collectively we have probably never had the amount of international, nation, and local attention of these issues as we do now. It's probably a foregone conclusion what the tree cover loss map for 2022 and beyond may look like if we don't aggressively elevate our intervention as good environmental stewards. Let's remember, there were not problems created overnight. So if you look also for the solution, they will not occur overnight either. A closer look at the situation here in Slovakia reveals a very acute situation. In particular, the tree cover loss between 2002 and 2021 saw the entire country of Slovakia lose 225,000 hectares of tree cover, equivalent to about 9.4% decrease in a tree cover since the year 2000. Let's also examine the climate consequences of these developments. Between 2001 and 2021, Slovakian forests removed 21.2 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year, while they emitted 5.42 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. This results in what we refer to as a net carbon flux of 15.7 megatons of carbon dioxide per year. This results in what we refer to as net carbon flux of 15.7 megatons of carbon dioxide per year. Stated differently and more simply, that means the forests of Slovakia are removing more carbon than they are emitting. On the balance, this reality is a healthy one, but the lack of consistent health across Slovakian forest means there is definitely room for improvement. We are going to take an encouraging closer look at what improvement could look like shortly. When we examine the situation further south in Carpathian mountains and Carpathian forests more closely, the situation with the terrestrial ecosystem there reveals a similar reality. In the area around Romania, tree cover loss between 2001 and 2021 totaled approximately 375,000 hectares. Between 2001 and 2021, forests around this region of the Carpathian removed about 49.9 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year, and they emitted about 9.57 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. That represents a net carbon flux of 40.3 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. Again, this is having a net positive influence of the environment, but we shall consider how we can improve the situation. We mentioned early that these were 2 decades of tree cover loss in Slovakia up through 2021. To be clear, not all tree cover loss necessarily means there is deforestation taking place. The decline in the tree cover loss between 2001 and 2021 was quite material and significant. The optimistic in me wants to believe we are doing a better job on conserving our forestry assets. The skeptic in me believes the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in less interaction with nature and therefore less opportunities for illegal deforestation to take place. On balance, of course, this would be a positive consequence. With bated breath, I cannot wait to see what the results for 2022 look like. In English, one phrase regarding our subject today is that we sometimes cannot see the forest through the trees. So let's talk about forest and not just tree cover loss. We can see that between 2013 and 2021, 100% of the tree cover loss took place in nature forests. What has evolved from the reality? We can see the total loss within a natural forest was equivalent to about 57.4 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Just how much is 57.4 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents anyway? This is equivalent to the amount of carbon sequestered by the 949 million tree seedlings growth for 10 years. It's also equivalent to the other measurements shown on this chart, including 26 billion kilos of coal burned or more than 12 million gas oil powered passenger vehicle driven for 1 year. On a positive note, we can see that less than 1% of tree cover loss is attributable to forest fires in Slovakia. As the name of the presentation suggests, we need to see the forest through the trees. So let's take a deeper look at the success that our forests are having across the Carpathian forestry ecosystem. Here in Slovakia, we can see forest-related greenhouse gas fluxes of approximately 50.7 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. This means the forests of Slovakia are successfully removing carbon, but some parts of the forests are still emitting carbon. It means there's room for improvement here in Slovakia. Up the road in the Czech Republic, carbon emissions from forests are twice as high as they are here in Slovakia. As the result is forests, they are only removing an average 7.90 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. There's clear room for improvement with our neighborhood too. Czech Republic may have higher FIFA football rating than Slovakia, but our forests are better than theirs. Perhaps some things are best left unsaid. Given the location of Carpathian forest in Romania, it's no surprise that this country is net remover of approximately 63.4 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. Romanian forests actually emit relatively little carbon, and they are a critical success story. The situation in Serbia is also very encouraging with its forests. The country is a net remover of 22.1 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year, and its forests have very little emissions. Some of us can remember the terrible illegal logging scandal that an Austrian company was involved in just a few years ago, and how it resulted in the degradation of Romania's last remaining virgin forests. In addition to being counterproductive in addressing global warming and climate change, these trees ended up through Europe's supply chain. Given global ESG standards, most of us with human decency would not want to consume something that was produced through slave labor. Likewise, human integrity and decency would suggest we should avoid building material that originate from environmentally destructive practice such as illegal logging. little bit closer to home. This was the scene with the national parks here in Slovakia. While we cannot view all logging activity through a purely negative perspective, environmentalists remind us the Slovakian forests are disappearing and extensive logging reduces the biodiversity in the forest. It also negatively impacts their water retention capabilities. One bad actor that this area of Europe has had the content with over the past several years is the bark beetle and some of its relatives. Here in Slovakia, the period between 2008 and 2011 was particularly bad. The total damage caused more destruction than wind damage, which has historically been the most destructive agent in Slovakia. In the slide, we can see just how bad the problem posed by the bark beetles has become for Slovakia. Data from the areas around the Carpathian forestry ecosystems yield similar results. The underscores the importance of post-disaster forestry management practices. As I just mentioned, damage from windstorms is another major problem that we need to contend with. In November 2004, an extremely damaging windstorm with gusts up to 170 kilometers per hour struck Slovakia. The most devastation occurred in the High Tatras Mountains, where a belt of timber forest measuring 60 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide was completely destroyed. In addition to the impact on Slovakian cities, the economic and ecological losses were substantial. The financial damage was nearly the equivalent of $400 million. Of course, we cannot necessarily control Mother Nature or how and when these types of windstorms impact us. This illustrates, however, the sheer and vital importance of doing all we can to control those elements of forestry management that we actually can control. Land use change and management is a major topic in forestry management, and I'm sure we can have some experts about this topic here in attendance today. This is actually a controversial topic. It has been estimated that dead wood release 10.9 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere and soil every year. On the other hand, deadwood plays vital roles in the forest ecosystems because when it decomposes, it contributes to the circle of nutrition in ecosystems. In effect, the world's deadwood currently stores about 73 billion tons of carbon. The 10.9 billion tons of carbon that are released into the atmosphere and soil every year are a little more than the world's total emissions from burning fossil fuels. As we understand, forests are critical carbon sinks where living trees capture and store carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping to regulate the Earth's climate. Deadwood actually makes up about 8% of this carbon stock in the world's forests. I have just spent a little while sharing some basic facts and being brutally honest in many regards, including the situation here in Slovakia. One of the benefits of being brutally honest in the once we understand the full extent of problems and challenges, we position ourselves in the best possible ways to implement solutions and address opportunities. I was brutally honest with the early photograph of my morning face. In doing so, I put myself in the best possible position to make myself presentable so that I can meet my daily challenges. Climate Goal is a company that innovates different technologies to address global warming and climate change. One of these technologies enables us to measure, improve, and monetize air quality. You are looking at the world's first small mass spectrometer. As some of us know, spectrometers are devices that measure gases and volatile organic compounds. They're typically quite large, difficult to move, and they can cost more than €250,000. Our colleagues at MIT developed patented technology that has resulted in a spectrometer that fits in the palm of one's hand, as you see on the picture. This device is even more sensitive and accurate than large units and costs 100 times less than legacy solution. The first use case our team is addressing with this solution relates to mobile access, such as heavy-duty trucks. We have come up with a way to measure the actual carbon emissions from logistics assets, such as a moving truck. Why is it important? Financial regulators in Europe, United States, Tokyo, Singapore, and elsewhere are now starting to require the publicly traded companies must report the so-called Scope 3 emissions created by the other participants across their supply chain. Given the requirements, it has become impossible to measure the actual real-time emissions from heavy-duty trucks until now. In summary, this innovation allows companies to report critical elements of their Scope 3 emissions. This is technology innovation developed at MIT in Boston, one of the leading engineering schools of the planet. It's patented technology and it's one of the most advanced solutions related to the measurement, reporting, and verification of emissions. Remember those three letters of the alphabet, please. MRV, measure, report, verify. This technology represents a paradigm shift in industry. The miniaturization is transforming an industry in real time. We all remember how mainframe computers were much larger than the laptops and devices we carry today. We also remember how landline telephones were inferior to today's mobile phone technology. Now, traditional spectrometry has also been miniaturized, equipping us with the ability the world needs to measure greenhouse gases inexpensively and with the scientific precision and objectivity. This technology innovation results in decentralized greenhouse gas analysis. Instead of taking samples to the centralized laboratory, we bring the decentralized laboratory out into the field where the samples are actually collected. This type of solution is portable, consumes low power, allows for remote reporting, and is inexpensive. When we compare our technology to the others in the air quality measurement industry, we can see our technology is portable, less expensive, more accurate, can be used with mobile assets such as automobiles, ships, and airplanes, and even results in the creation of carbon credits. This technology results in scientific precision and objectivity required to measure, report, and verify greenhouse gases with the accuracy demanded in today's fight against the climate change. One of the German largest auto logistic company has seen the logic that using these devices to reduce its annual carbon tax bill and generate carbon trading assets that can be sold by deploying these units across its fleet of 1,000 heavy-duty trucks. The simple fact with modern trucks is that their actual carbon emissions footprints are considerably less than the government's estimates, and our innovation confirms this is reality. In fact, the trucking fleet operator with 1,000 trucks can actually save millions of euro per year through this innovative technology. Most countries on Earth have submitted nationally determined contributions to the United Nations to prioritize their participation in the fight against global warming. One disappointing aspect is that most countries have not incorporated forestry management in their nationally determined contributions. Again, forests are natural carbon sinks, and successfully forestry management can help countries better achieve their carbon management objectives and enhance their nationally determined contributions. One of the technologies that a company gets involved with is artificial intelligence. In fact, our team has been involved in artificial intelligence for more than 25 years. We have developed more than 100 use cases around AI, including some that have been applied to forestry management. Our teams work with specialized drone technology that utilize artificial intelligence to evaluate topography and soil suitability. These same drones have proprietary methods for planting large numbers of seed pods in ideal growing locations, and our germination success rate is about 70%. This nearly double average success rate if you and I were to go out and there manually plant trees. In fact, these drones are capable of planting close to 1 million trees in just 2 days' time. As part of European Union, Slovakia's nation determination contributions are aligned with those of other member states. While Slovakia and other Carpathian Convention countries will do as much as they can to meet their nationally determined contributions, it is clear that improved forestry management can result in higher level of carbon sequestration. One example of a nearby country that has realized this is Moldova. Of course, Moldova is not an EU member state yet, but it has nonetheless recognized the importance of incorporating broadened forestry management into these national determination contributions. Countries like Moldova, Suriname, Rwanda, Jamaica, Chile, Ecuador have expanded their nationally determined contribution strategies to better incorporate the roles of the forest and land used in achieving their mitigation goals and adoption plans. In Moldova's case, there is a greater emphasis on afforestation and reforestation, agroforestry, sustainable management of forests and ecosystem services, and the restoration of degraded pastures. Let's briefly conclude this presentation with some proposed recommendations. First and foremost, we strongly recommend better alignment among locations, regional, and national governments. That's why conferences such as today's Carpathian Convention are so important. As I just mentioned, there's clearly room for improvement beyond the current national determined contributions that has been submitted by countries and the European Union. How can we calculate this room for improvement? Early, I said that red dots are bad. Similarly, I'm happy to inform you that the green dots are good. A collaborative effort involving 20 stakeholders that was published 2 years ago provides the basic for estimating the rates at which carbon could be sequestered in above ground live biomass during the first 30 years of natural forest regrowth in potential reforestable areas. This is mouthful. In the interest of time, look at a wide range of projected areas across Slovakia where carbon can be sequestered by new forests over the next 30 years. Look at the High Tatras Mountains areas and look at the southern part of the country. There's a lot of green dots representing strong potential for sharp increase in the carbon sequestration. The projected areas of improvement can be seen across the Carpathian forest ecosystems as well. Look at the staggering potential evident across all countries as represented by these green dots. The moral to this story is that we can and should be elevating our forestry management practices to optimize these natural carbon sinks. Countries and stakeholders should also incorporate artificial intelligence and drone technology more. Many of us become scared when we hear the term AI. The fact is that the combination of drone technology and artificial intelligence has resulted in a better data and better outcomes, including the enhanced forestry restoration in many countries. Our team specialized in these types of solutions. EU member states have done adequate job in projected carbon scenarios over the next 20-30 years across a range of forestry-related categories. We need to establish and enhance national systems that allow for progress to be tracked and verified across the entire spectrum of stakeholders. Remember those three critical letters from early? M for measurement, R for reporting, V for verification. We also need to broaden our response targets. This includes reducing deforestation, limiting forest degradation, improving forestry management and afforestation, and expanding reforestation and restoration. We also recommend regularly updating our national adaptation plans. There are some flexibilities built into the EU-wide national determination contributions. As these effort-sharing responsibilities become reality over the next several years, we encourage a strong emphasis on high achievable forestry-related targets. As we collectively work to strengthen our mitigation targets over the next several years, we also need to align our carbon budgets with net zero long-term strategies. We also need to improve adaptation objectives and finance goals. The simple fact is that the banks and other financial institutions are drastically increasing their lending budgets for so-called green finance and blue finance. It's estimated that by the end of 2022, more than 500 billion in the new credit facilities will have been credited for sustainable finance just in this year alone. The carbon trading markets are destined to become home to one of the largest commodity trading opportunities of our lifetimes. As these markets continue to expand, so too will our collective abilities to finance these forestry initiatives. I would like to sincerely thank you for attending our climate goal presentation today. In closing, I would like to reaffirm that climate goals values people, relationships, and partnerships in this area. Please feel free to contact us to discuss your ideas and areas of possible cooperation. Thank you very much.